On my wedding day, our motorcade suffered a terrible accident. My groom carried his childhood friend in his arms to the ambulance, who only had a minor scratch. He left me, bleeding in my wedding dress, on the side of the highway. 3 days later, he showed up at the hospital looking for his bride. My attending doctor just gave a cold smile. Before walking away, the doctor said over his shoulder that it would have been a good idea to turn that wedding into a funeral. When our limo slammed into the concrete barrier, my pristine white dress was still perfect. Then the window shattered into a million pieces. The front end crumpled like it had been crushed by the invisible fist of a giant. My lower leg was pinned hard by the twisted metal of the front seat, and the hem of my dress was soaking up blood fast. The driver was slumped over the wheel, groaning, begging for help. My maid of honor, Tara, went pale with horror and lunged toward me. She screamed at me not to move because my leg was bleeding heavily. I looked down. Blood was seeping through the tulle of my skirt, dripping endlessly onto the floor mat. Derek jumped out of the car right behind us. I thought he'd run to pull me out first. It was our wedding day, after all. We'd been together for 6 years, from college dorms to our first real jobs, from renting tiny apartments to finally buying my own place. From the moment his mother first sneered at me because I came from a blue-collar family, to the day he finally nodded and said we could have a small ceremony. I thought at the very least, in a moment like this, he'd remember I was his bride. But he ran right past me, straight to the other car. Natalie was sitting in the passenger seat. She had a tiny scratch on her hand. Her eyes were red. She leaned against the door and said in a trembling voice that she was terrified, and her chest felt tight. Derek immediately scooped her up in his arms and started frantically soothing her. Tara was stunned. She screamed at him, "Derek, Chloe is still in the car! She's trapped and she's bleeding!" Derek paused for a fraction of a second. He looked at me over his shoulder. It was a fleeting glance, like he was checking on some random stranger. "Tara, help her out for now," he said. "The EMTs will be here any second. Natalie has a weak heart. She can't take any stress right now." I gripped the car door so hard, my knuckles turned white. Tara's voice cracked with rage. "She just has a scratch." Chloe is crushed in the wreckage. Natalie, sitting in Derek's arms, let out a soft sob, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Derek, I'm holding you back," she whispered. "Put me down. Leave me here. Otherwise, Chloe is going to be so mad at me." Derek frowned and told her to be quiet and save her strength. The first ambulance arrived. Paramedics pulled out a gurney. Derek, carrying Natalie, walked straight toward it. I was still sitting in the mangled limo. The wind howled through the broken windows. Violent, freezing shivers shook my entire body. I called out to him. He stopped by the ambulance doors. "Are you sure you want to take her first?" I asked, barely moving my lips. He looked at me with deep impatience. "Chloe, please, don't make a jealous scene at a time like this. Natalie's condition is unstable, and you have Tara and the driver with you." I let out a short laugh. My lips were cracked and smiling hurt. "I'm bleeding, Derek." "I know," he answered. "Just hold on. Be strong." Those words turned all my physical pain into a freezing, numb void. The ambulance doors slammed shut. The red and blue lights hit my eyes like cheap Christmas decorations. Tara cursed furiously, crouching down to help me press a cloth against the wound. She begged me to hold on, saying she had already called 911 for a second ambulance and the fire department. I didn't look back in the direction Derek had gone. I pulled my engagement ring off my finger. Derek had picked it out himself. Our initials were engraved inside. The day he proposed, he told me he would never let me face hardships alone again. Now the white gold was smeared with my blood. I pressed it into Tara's palm and asked her to keep it safe while tears streamed down her face. Tara begged me to stay quiet and save my energy. I just stared at the ring, thinking about how I would have to give it back to him. The second ambulance took another 15 minutes to arrive. As they loaded me onto the stretcher, the snow-white hem of my dress dragged across the asphalt, leaving a long, thick, red trail. The relatives from the motorcade were whispering all around us. Somebody muttered that seeing blood on a bride was a terrible omen. Someone else defended Derek, saying Natalie had been in poor health since childhood. And someone whispered softly, "Chloe is a sensible girl. She'll understand. She won't make a scene over Natalie." I closed my eyes and burned every single one of those sentences into my memory forever. On the way to the ER, I started shaking violently. In the trauma bay, a nurse cut away the bottom half of my dress. The attending trauma surgeon, Dr. Alex Vance, took one look at the wound and immediately ordered an OR prepped for suturing. The nurse asked if any family was present. Tara stepped right up. "I'm her best friend. I'll sign whatever you need." "Where's the groom?" the nurse asked, startled, looking at the torn remains of my wedding dress. "He left with another woman," Tara answered through gritted teeth. Dr. Vance gave me a grave look, asked no more questions, and ordered the wound prepped immediately. When the needle and thread pierced my skin, my fingers trembled from the pain. Tara held my hand, whispering that she had called my mom and that she was rushing over. I nodded. My phone, sitting on the stretcher next to me, wouldn't stop buzzing. The wedding group chat was blowing up. Derek's mother, Brenda, sent a voice memo in her shrill, perfectly articulated tone. "Dear guests, please don't panic. The reception will just be delayed a bit. Sweet Natalie got a terrible scare, and Derek took her to get checked out. She just can't handle stress. Chloe doesn't have anything serious. Brides are simply too emotional on their wedding day. Please be understanding." I stared at the audio transcript on the screen and suddenly realized how absurdly ridiculous it all was. I had 7 stitches in my leg. I had a severe lower back contusion and a suspected concussion from slamming my head against the side window. But coming from my future mother-in-law, I was just an overly emotional bride. I didn't reply. I asked Tara to screenshot every message in the chat and back them up. Tara took the screenshots, cursing them out and calling the whole family a pack of sociopaths. "Don't insult them, just save it," I said quietly. "It will come in handy later." That night, my mother, Helen, burst into the hospital room. She was still wearing her bakery apron. Her hands were white with flour stains. The second she walked in and saw the thick layer of bandages on my leg, her eyes filled with tears. "Chloe, honey, does it hurt a lot?" I hadn't cried up to that point, but hearing my mother's voice made my eyes sting unbearably. Still, I didn't let the tears fall. "Mom, I'm not getting married," I said firmly. My mother froze. She looked at me. Then she looked at the plastic bag in the corner, holding the ruined, blood-soaked dress. Suddenly she reached out, stroked my hair and said, "Okay, don't get married." No trying to talk me out of it, no questions about what people would say, no lamenting over the guests who were already gathered. Just those 4 words. And in that moment, I wanted to sob harder than I had at the crash scene. Derek didn't come that night. He sent a text. "Natalie is still under observation on an IV. The doctors are just being cautious. You have Tara and your mom with you, so I'll come by in the morning. Chloe, please don't make a big deal out of the wedding delay. My mom's blood pressure spiked. She's exhausted." I stared at the glowing screen for a long time. Then I silently handed the phone to Tara for a screenshot. Tara, jaw clenched, did as I asked. Then I opened my Chase banking app. I canceled the $500 recurring monthly transfer I had set up to help Derek's mother with her bills. I opened the payment page for the venue's outstanding balance and canceled the transfer. Finally, I went into my contacts and changed Derek's name. He was now saved as debtor. After doing all that, I sank back against the pillows. Outside the window, the ER lights flared. I heard the wail of sirens. Another ambulance had arrived. Every day, someone was brought to this hospital, and someone left it. And me, on my wedding day, I had finally woken up from a 6-year coma. At 3 a.m., a nurse came in to do rounds. She saw my engagement ring on the nightstand, sighed, and advised me to get some sleep. "Excuse me, what department is Natalie Miller in?" I asked. The nurse hesitated. "Oh, she's down here in the ER observation unit. Nothing serious, just a minor scratch and a panic attack." I managed to smile. "And the man who brought her in," the nurse lowered her voice, "he's sitting with her, registered as an accompanying family member." "Honey, don't overthink it. You need to focus on healing." Of course I was going to think about it, but not about why he didn't come to see me. I was thinking about how to start settling scores the next day. Derek didn't show up until the 3rd day. By then, I had already signed my discharge papers. The wound on my leg was still throbbing hard. I had to use a cane and lean heavily on Tara to walk. Dr. Vance advised me not to rush it, but my mom said recovering at home in our own space would be much better. And I couldn't stay inside those walls, waiting for a man who always chose someone else. Before I left, Dr. Vance handed me the discharge report. "Keep the wound dry. Change the dressings strictly on schedule. Strict bed rest for your back. If you see double, come straight back to me," he instructed sternly. I took the papers and thanked him. Alex looked at my regular sweatpants and hoodie. Then he looked at the bag holding my ruined wedding dress. "Do you still need this wedding?" he asked suddenly. I shook my head. "No." Alex nodded. "Good. A person has to learn to live for themselves first." Half an hour after I left, Derek practically stormed into my hospital room. The nurses later told Tara he was still wearing his wedding suit jacket. His collar was wrinkled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Seeing the empty, perfectly made bed, he froze. "Where is Chloe Evans discharged?" the desk nurse replied. Derek frowned. "Who authorized her discharge in that condition?" Right then, Dr. Vance walked out of the doctor's lounge holding some charts. He looked Derek up and down. She wanted to leave. Her mother signed the consent. "And who exactly are you to her?" Derek's face darkened. "I'm her fiancé." Alex gave a cold smile. "Fiancé? What kind of tone is that for a doctor?" Derek snapped. Alex closed the chart. His voice wasn't loud, but the hallway suddenly got very quiet. "When your fiancé was brought in with a shredded dress, got 7 stitches, and was diagnosed with a concussion, her friend signed the papers. While you, at that exact same time, carried another perfectly healthy woman into the ER and signed for her as family. And now, 3 days later, you storm into my unit demanding rights and asking, 'Where is my bride?' Derek's face turned to stone. Natalie has specific needs. It was a special case. I didn't abandon Chloe." Before walking away to continue his rounds, Alex looked back. "You know, it would have been a good idea to turn your wedding into a funeral." Derek was stunned. "What the hell are you talking about?" "You should bury this wedding," the doctor stated coldly. "Don't worry, the girl is alive, healthy, and luckily single." When Tara told me about this scene, I was sitting in the back room of my mom's bakery, changing my dressing. Tara mimicked Dr. Vance's steely tone so theatrically that my mom, while pouring me a bowl of chicken noodle soup, nodded in approval. "Good man. Put him right in his place." Just then my phone rang. Deader flashed on the screen. I declined the call. When he called a third time, I answered. His voice sounded tight, heavy with suppressed anger. Chloe, why didn't you tell me you were getting discharged? We're acting like strangers. I looked at the fresh bandages on my leg. You were busy. He went silent for a few seconds, then let out a deep sigh. I know how much what happened on our wedding day hurt you, but Natalie was so scared she had an episode. You know she has childhood trauma from that car crash years ago. So my sliced open leg and bleeding out don't count as an accident? I asked in a perfectly even tone. I didn't mean that, he exhaled in frustration. Chloe, come on. Don't compare yourself to her. And who should I compare myself to? He fell quiet. In the background of the call, I heard a soft, painfully familiar female voice. Derek, honey, please don't argue because of me. This is all my fault. Her voice was sweet, but it pricked like a needle. Derek instantly switched to a tender tone. Nat lay back down. You shouldn't be up. I put the phone on speaker. Hearing him, Tara turned purple with rage. Derek, where are you right now? I asked calmly. He hesitated. In Natalie's room? The doctor said they need to observe her a bit longer. I let out a short laugh. A scratch on the hand and a panic attack require a 3-day admission, while your bride with 7 stitches and a concussion discharges herself. Just brilliant. Derek's voice hardened again. Chloe, stop being so toxic. The wedding has already gone to hell. Everyone is really stressed out right now. Go home. We'll sit down like adults and manage the fallout. I'm already managing the fallout on my own, I replied. What does that mean? I grabbed a heavy folder off the table. It contained deeds, Home Depot receipts, contracts with the venue, the event planner, the limo service, and the ring. It means the wedding is canceled and the engagement is broken. And it also means I expect a full refund of all the money I put into renovating that condo, the reception deposits, your mother's debts, and those monthly transfers I sent her to live on. We are going to square the accounts down to the last cent. A dead silence fell over the line. Then Derek, like he had just heard an absurd joke, let out a nervous laugh. Chloe, aren't you tired of this circus? I wasn't angry. When disappointment hits rock bottom, the rage just evaporates. This isn't a circus, Derek. It's a pre-litigation notice. All this just because I took Natalie to the hospital first, he snapped, raising his voice. This is because I cut him off. Looking at the calendar on the wall. For 6 years, you constantly forced me to push my own needs aside for her. His breathing sped up. Natalie doesn't have anyone. She's an orphan. She only has our family. My dad died when I was a kid. My mom raised me alone, breaking her back in this bakery. But we never used the lack of a father to emotionally blackmail people. You didn't used to be like this, Derek said quietly, bitterly. Fair enough, I replied with a smile. I used to be a very comfortable doormat. A heavy pause hung in the air. I continued. By 6 p.m. today, I will email you the itemized spreadsheet. The ring will be sent by courier. And a reminder, I paid the full down payment and the total cost of the complete gut renovation of that condo. You and Brenda have 3 days to pack your shit and get out. Derek finally panicked. You want to kick us out of the apartment, Chloe? That's our family nest. I no longer have a family with you. I hung up. Tara slammed her palm on the table. It's about time you threw that trash out. My mother remained silent. She pushed the cooling bowl of soup toward me, set down a fresh slice of sourdough bread, and said, Eat. You need strength to collect debts. I lowered my head and started eating. The hot steam hit my face. Suddenly, I remembered the day 3 years ago when we were applying for the mortgage. Derek looked away and said his finances were tight, promising to contribute to the principal payments later. His mother, Brenda, pursed her lips and declared, "Chloe, don't be so petty. You're going to be a family. The deed should be in both your names equally. In marriage, everything is shared." I stood my ground and put the deed solely in my name. Because of that, my future mother-in-law spent half a month with a sour face complaining to all the relatives about my gold-digging nature. Later, she changed tactics, pushing that weird argument that we were one single family and masterfully guilt-tripping me until she got me to pay for the whole remodel, buy the furniture, and even pay off Derek's credit card. I had been tracking it all. Only back then, I logged those expenses in a family budget planner, dreaming of our future. Now, I had compiled them into an Excel sheet to prove a point. I wasn't the freeloader, who, as Brenda loved to say, had married into her family to get everything handed to me on a silver platter. That afternoon, I sent Derek the expense report. Item 1, condo down payment, $86,000, paid from Chloe Evans' personal account. Item 2, renovations, $23,760. Furniture and appliances, $16,420. Item 3, non-refundable deposits for the venue, wedding planner, limo service, and photographer. Total, $21,300. Item 4, payment for private clinic bills, medications, and monthly living allowances for Brenda Sinclair over the last 2 years. Total, $13,500. Item 5, personal injury compensation stemming from a traffic accident caused by an unauthorized route change of the motorcade will be calculated separately following the official Highway Patrol collision report. Derek left me on red, but 10 minutes later, his mother unleashed a hurricane in the Sinclair family group chat. "Family, I need you to hear this. On my son's wedding day, there was a tiny little fender bender, and our little princess turned her nose up. She ran away. She refuses to come back, and on top of that, she slapped us with a bill for thousands of dollars, claiming we stole from her. My poor Derek, what terrible luck he's had getting mixed up with such a cold, calculating, heartless viper." I looked at the screen calmly. Tara looked over my shoulder. "Are you going to reply?" "Of course," I nodded. I dropped the first receipt into the chat, the bank transfer for the venue, then the second, the contract with the contractors, then the third, the bank statement showing the $86,000 down payment. I kept firing off PDFs until a dead silence fell over the chat. Finally, I typed, "Brenda, this invoice isn't a bridal tantrum. It is the official withdrawal of my investments in your family due to the cancellation of the wedding." A minute later, Derek's aunt jumped into the fray. "Chloe, honey, you can't be this immature. Nobody wanted the accident. Derek, as a man, simply took care of a weak girl in an emergency. Why air out dirty laundry?" With all these papers, I didn't bother arguing with her. I just took a picture of my hospital discharge report and sent it to the chat. On the document with the blue hospital seal, it clearly read, "Laceration to the lower left leg, 7 sutures applied. Severe soft tissue contusion to the lumbar region. Concussion, admitted for observation." An avalanche of confused ellipses and half-written messages flooded the chat. Then, I sent a photo of Natalie's medical report. Tara had managed to snap a picture of it at the nurse's station. Superficial abrasion on the back of the left hand. Situational anxiety. Rest recommended. Tara, sitting next to me, was dying of silent laughter. The contrast was absolutely brutal. Derek's mother quickly deleted her first message insulting me, but the screenshots were already safely tucked away in my folder. She instantly changed her tune. Well, who understands all that medical jargon anyway? Sweet Natalie has been fragile since she was a little girl. For her, a scare is worse than any scratch. Chloe, you are a grown, sensible woman, practically family. Be the bigger person. Yield. Reading those demands, to be the bigger person and yield, I felt nothing but a wild absurdity. Natalie was only a year younger than me, but from the very day Derek and I started dating, everyone in his family forced me to cater to her. If Natalie said she liked the bridal bouquet I had picked out, my mother-in-law would sigh. Chloe, it's such a small thing for Natalie. Pick another one for yourself. Don't be selfish. When Natalie said she wanted to ride in the car right behind our main limo, Derek begged me. She gets carsick easily. Let her ride close. It'll give me peace of mind. The night before the wedding, Natalie suddenly felt anxious and lonely, and Derek stayed on the phone with her until 2 a.m., leaving me alone in the hotel suite to double-check the guest lists for the third time. Back then, I convinced myself it was just empathy, but now I understood. It wasn't about my maturity. It was about their boundless audacity. I sent the motorcade route map to the chat and tagged Brenda. I am not Natalie's mother or her nurse. Her place in the motorcade and the route were agreed upon in advance. And very soon, I will find out exactly whose brilliant idea it was to change the approved route right before a major highway construction zone. After that message, Natalie herself finally appeared in the chat. Chloe, I am so sorry. This is all my fault. I'm begging you, don't be mad at Aunt Brenda or Derek. I swear I didn't want you to get hurt. She attached a photo of her arm, wrapped in a bandage. The angle was chosen so dramatically that the tiny band-aid underneath looked like a post-amputation dressing. A few soft-hearted aunts immediately rushed to coddle her. Poor thing. Chloe, don't be so aggressive. You've both suffered. I didn't explain anything. I just sent the photo of my wedding dress soaked in fresh blood. Tara had taken the picture by the ER doors. I was sitting in a wheelchair with the hem cut off by trauma shears. My calf was wrapped in a thick layer of gauze soaked red, and my face was as white as chalk. The chat died. About 10 minutes later, one of the distant relatives who almost never posted asked cautiously, "That wound looks horrible. Derek, did you really leave your bride in that condition and not go with her?" Nobody answered, because the truth was too ugly. Finally, Derek came online. Chloe, stop talking about our private business in public. Your mother was the first one to post here that I was a gold-digging viper running off with your money, I replied. I was just too stressed out. And were you stressed out when I was bleeding out in twisted metal? Or were you just stressed out about how fast you could carry someone else in your arms? After sending that, I left the group. Tara clapped. Bravo, Chloe. That was magnificent. My mother standing nearby frowned. They aren't going to let this go easily, honey. My mother was right. At 4 p.m., Brenda, flanked by two of her loudmouth relatives, stormed into our bakery. It was the afternoon rush. The tables were full of customers. The second she crossed the threshold, she started wailing loudly, drawing the attention of the entire room. Good people, look at this. On my son's wedding day, there was a terrible accident, and this daughter-in-law, instead of uniting with the family, hits us with bills and demands money like we didn't marry off our son, but took out a predatory loan. Customers started turning around. My mom stepped out from behind the pastry counter. Her face hardened. Brenda, stop making a circus out of my business. Derek's mother immediately pointed a finger at my mom. You, Helen, raise a terrible daughter. She wants to skin us alive, steal our apartment, and that's after we paid for part of the wedding and gave you money. I leaned on my cane and stood up slowly. A sharp stab of pain in my leg made me freeze for a second. Tara tried to jump up, but I stopped her with a gesture. Step by step, I walked up to Brenda. "You gave $8,800, I said loudly, making sure the whole cafe heard me. Out of which you took back $6,000 the very next day, claiming Derek's cousin urgently needed money for his business. The remaining $2,800 went to the photographer's deposit. Do you want me to print the Chase bank statements right now and tape them to the front door?" My future mother-in-law's face broke out in red splotches. The cafe customers were openly whispering. The deposits for the venue, the planner, and the limos were paid personally by me. Receipt by receipt, I continued. Your family bought exactly 1 case of champagne and 2 cases of vodka for the brunch the next morning. And even for that, your son asked me to Venmo him half because he miscalculated his budget. Tara immediately pulled copies of the receipts from the folder and slammed them onto the nearest table with a sharp smack. Brenda's relatives reached for the papers, but Tara barked, "Don't even touch them. You fold them, you buy them." Brenda raised her pitch to a shriek. "We are a family! Why are you counting every penny in such detail?" I looked her dead in the eye. We are no longer family. The moment I said those words, a ringing silence fell over the cafe. The exaggerated despair on his mother's face morphed into genuine shock. Are you seriously canceling the wedding?" She narrowed her eyes maliciously. "Who is going to want you at 28? And with the shame of a canceled wedding on top of it? You're basically damaged goods." Suddenly, my mom grabbed a wet rag off the counter and violently hurled it into the metal sink. The crash made everyone jump. "My daughter is not livestock at a market waiting to be bought," my mom declared in an icy tone. Derek's mother stepped back. I was stunned too. My mom had always avoided conflict. She had always tried to be polite. For years, she had silently swallowed Brenda's subtle jabs about our lack of money. She had always taught me to smooth things over. But now, she was standing in front of me, her voice trembling slightly, but not backing down an inch. "Brenda," my mother said, locking eyes with her, "my baby girl was bleeding to death in her wedding dress, and your son couldn't care less. And you have the nerve to come to my coffee shop and throw a tantrum? If you have a shred of decency left, pay your debts and get out. If not, I will personally file charges against you for trespassing and harassment." Among the customers, a man commented quietly, "Wow, the groom's family has 0 boundaries." Brenda couldn't handle the public humiliation. She waved a finger in the air, screamed, "You're going to regret this," and shot out the door, dragging her relatives behind her. "The only thing I regret is not seeing the truth sooner," I yelled after her. When the door closed, my mom turned to go into the kitchen. I noticed how badly her hands were shaking. I walked over and hugged her. Mom lowered her head, hurriedly wiped her tears with her apron, and whispered, "Chloe, I used to think if you just held on a little, if you stayed quiet, things would work out, that you'd learn to love him. But now I realize that with some people, the more you endure, the more they wipe their feet on you." I squeezed her hands. "We're not enduring anymore, Mom." That night, Derek drove to the bakery. He didn't come inside. He just stood under the street lamp. When I walked out, leaning on my cane, he stared hard at my bandaged leg. For the first time, genuine, unfaked panic crossed his eyes. "Does it hurt a lot?" he asked hoarsely. "Cut to the chase," I interrupted. His Adam's apple bobbed. "My mom shouldn't have come here to make a scene. I apologize for her." "Then she should be the one apologizing." He took a step toward me. "Chloe, really." Do our 6 years have to end like this over one mistake? I looked at him. The street lamp cast a long, broken shadow on the pavement. I had loved this man for 6 years. I knew he had acid reflux, that he hated cilantro, that when he lied or got nervous, he rubbed the bridge of his nose. And I knew that every time before taking Natalie's side, he said my name with a very specific, pleading intonation. Chloe, come on, be reasonable. Chloe, Natalie's having a hard time. Chloe, don't put me in an awkward position. In the past, those words had bound me hand and foot with guilt. Now those ties had rotted and snapped. It wasn't a mistake, Derek, and I'm not the one making a scene. I am simply demanding my money back. Derek covered his eyes with his hand. Please, can we put a pin in the eviction? My mom has a heart condition. She absolutely cannot get stressed right now. I let out a short laugh. Here we go again. What's so funny? He frowned. That the second I mention my physical injuries, you bring up Natalie's mental health? The second I mention my money, you hide behind your mother's blood pressure. Everyone in your family has special circumstances, and I am the only one forced to be a steel-reinforced punching bag. Derek's face paled. He opened his mouth to argue, but the phone in his pocket buzzed. Natalie's photo popped up on the screen. He answered reflexively. A tearful, breathless voice came through the speaker. Derek, my hand hurts so much. The doctor said I might scar. What if I can't play the piano? Derek tensed up immediately. Nat, calm down. I'm coming right now. As he said it, he stopped short, remembering I was standing right in front of him. He looked at me. A pathetic awkwardness flickered in his eyes. Chloe, I'll find you later. It's fine. I nodded. He froze, clearly not used to my calm. And starting today, I added, you no longer need to report your visits to her, to me. It's none of my business anymore. On the fourth day, I drove to my condo to pick up the rest of my important documents. The condo was in a nice, quiet suburb. It was spacious, 3 bedrooms. I had saved for 5 years for the down payment, and my mom had sold my grandmother's old cabin to give me the rest of the money. Derek had sworn back then that he had just been promoted, but that his whole paycheck was going toward his car loan and professional certification courses. I believed him. The only thing I didn't cave on was putting the deed exclusively in my name. Brenda had hammered me about it for ages. Now I understood. From people like them, you have to protect yourself legally, not morally. Tara drove me. The second I opened the door with my key, an unfamiliar, cloying, disgusting perfume hit my nose. I stopped in the hallway. Tara sniffed the air too, and her expression instantly changed. The door to my master bedroom was half open. Natalie was sitting at my vanity. She was wearing a wildly expensive white silk bridal robe, the exact one I had bought specifically for the getting ready photos on the morning of my wedding. Her hair was down, there was no trace of a panic attack on her face, and she was admiringly trying on my gold earrings in the mirror. Seeing my reflection in the glass, she shrieked and jumped to her feet. Chloe, what are you doing here? I looked her slowly up and down, locking in on my robe over her shoulders. This is my apartment. She turned beet red and instantly slipped on the mask of a cornered victim. Derek let me rest here for a bit. I couldn't sleep at the hospital because of the stress, and the apartment was empty anyway. Tara exploded. You put on her bridal lingerie, dig through her jewelry box, and call it resting? Natalie's eyes immediately filled with tears. I didn't know these things were yours. I was just cold after my shower. I grabbed the first thing I saw. I walked right past her in silence and opened my closet. My wedding coat was crumpled haphazardly and shoved into a corner. Meanwhile, Natalie's dresses hung in perfect rows on my hangers. On my nightstand, an army of her moisturizers, her makeup, and her pink gym bottle were lined up. This wasn't a temporary shelter. She had fully moved in. I pulled out my iPhone and started recording everything. Natalie lunged at me, trying to cover the camera lens with her hand. "Why are you recording?" "Gathering evidence for the police," I replied calmly, without lowering the phone. "Trespassing and malicious destruction of private property." She went pale. "Chloe, what horrible things you're saying. Derek and I grew up together. He was just acting like a brother. He was afraid I wouldn't have anyone to take care of me. And so this brother moved you into my premarital property. Into my bed," I clarified. She bit her lip and stayed quiet. The front door slammed. Derek had come running. Natalie must have managed to text him. He flew into the bedroom and, seeing me with the camera, turned dark red. "Chloe, what are you doing now?" I silently pointed a finger at Natalie's silk robe. "Take it off right now." Derek frowned and stepped in front of her to protect her. "Chloe, come on. Natalie isn't well. Why are you humiliating her over a piece of fabric?" I stared at him, amazed at how blind I had been and how masterfully he twisted reality. If Natalie took someone else's property and the owner demanded it back, that was called humiliation. "It's not the piece of fabric. It is my personal property," I stated, enunciating every syllable. "And being on someone else's property without permission in this country is called trespassing." Natalie burst into loud sobs, burying her face in his shoulder. "Derek, I swear I didn't know. I was just so cold." Derek stroked her hair and spat venom at me. "It's just clothes. I'll pay you for it since you're being so damn petty." I put my phone back in my pocket. Perfect. La Perla silk robe, $380. The earrings she was touching, $120. Egyptian cotton sheets she slept on, $60 the set. Total, $560. Venmo me right now. Derek froze. Tara, standing in the doorway, let out a laugh. Natalie stopped sobbing too. She clearly hadn't expected me to pull out a mental calculator. Derek's face twisted with indignation. "When did you get so calculating?" I pulled up my Venmo QR code on the screen and shoved it under his nose. "From the exact moment you carried her in your arms to the ambulance, leaving me bleeding out." Pay. He looked at me like I was an alien. I didn't look away. Finally, breathing heavily, he pulled out his phone and transferred the money. Maybe he was embarrassed in front of Tara, or maybe he was afraid of a police report. Hearing the notification chime, I opened my suitcase and started gathering my important documents from the safe. Tara expertly sorted the folders, the deed, the HOA papers, the contractor invoices. Derek shifted uncomfortably from one foot to the other. His tone suddenly turned pleading. "Chloe, let's not start a war over the condo. Natalie will leave in a couple of days, I promise you. And when we both calm down a bit, we can set a new courthouse date, sit down and talk this through calmly." I froze over the suitcase and slowly stood straight. "Derek, do you really think I'm just throwing a tantrum so you'll chase after me?" He blinked, bewildered. "Aren't you?" I smiled bitterly, reached into a folder and pulled out a piece of paper folded in half. It was a draft of a prenuptial agreement. 6 months ago, Brenda had slid it to me just to take a look. It stipulated in black and white that after marriage, I would agree to take on half of Derek's existing debts. The condo would become community property, despite being bought before the marriage, and his mother would be granted the right to live there indefinitely. Back then, it outraged me, and I refused to sign. Now, That paper was the best proof of his rotten core. I threw the paper at his chest. Your mom asked her lawyer friend to draft this garbage, didn't she? Derek caught the paper, his ears turning red. She was just worried about the financial stability of our future family. Stability, I scoffed. A stability where I pay the mortgage and the renovations. Your mother lives here for free, and you bring your perpetually sick little friend into my master bedroom. Don't drag Natalie into this. Isn't she standing in the middle of my bedroom right now, wearing my robe? Silence filled the room. Natalie shrank against the doorframe, turning pale, then flushed. I zipped up my suitcase. As I walked past Natalie, I stopped. She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. Listen closely, I said right to her face. If you need Derek so badly, keep him. You don't have to fake heart attacks anymore. You don't have to call me honey anymore. And you don't have to steal my things anymore. You are not a fragile, sick girl. You're just greedy and have absolutely no morals. Tears rolled down her cheeks. That's not true, Derek exploded. Shut your mouth, Chloe. Natalie already feels guilty. Why are you making up such disgusting shit about her? I pulled the ring box out of my pocket, snapped it open, and slammed it down hard on the dresser. The white gold, which Tara had wiped my blood off, gleamed coldly. Returned, I snapped. Derek's eyes darted to the ring. Are you serious? I pulled a printed official notice from my bag. This condo is exclusively my property. You have exactly 3 days for Brenda to get her junk out, and your little orphan needs to pack her bags and leave right now, or I will call the cops to forcibly remove a trespasser. Derek stared at the paper as if finally realizing the script had been shredded, and he was no longer in control. Chloe, we need to talk. Just us. We've already said everything. You can't be this cruel. I looked at him for a long time. When I was sitting in a crushed car, feeling the blood run down my leg, watching your ambulance doors close, that was when you taught me how to be cruel. With those words, I dragged my suitcase toward the exit. A muffled whimper from Natalie sounded behind me. Derek didn't follow me. When the elevator doors closed, Tara gently touched my shoulder. It hurts, doesn't it? She tried to hug me, but I lifted my head. It hurts, but I don't regret a thing. That night, Natalie, playing the ultimate martyr, posted a black and white photo on Instagram of her hand with a small, perfectly placed Band-Aid. The caption read, "Sometimes circumstances are stronger than us, and some misunderstandings cannot be explained. I just hope people stop radiating hate and find a drop of kindness in their hearts." Mutual friends started sending me screenshots immediately. In the comments, people were writing to Natalie, "You are too good. Throwing a tantrum over a scratch on her own wedding day is psychotic behavior from the bride." I quietly saved all the screenshots into a folder on my laptop named Defamation Trial Materials. Tara, sitting nearby with a glass of wine, asked, "Are you going to reply to that garbage in the comments?" "No," I smiled. "Let them keep digging their own grave. In court, these screenshots will be worth a lot more than likes." On the 7th day, I went back to the trauma clinic for a follow-up. The wound was closing, but putting weight on my leg was agonizing. When Dr. Vance removed the old bandage and saw me clench my teeth until they almost ground together, he huffed softly. "If it hurts, you're allowed to say ouch." I don't hand out medals for suffering in stoic silence. I let the air hiss through my teeth. I'm used to enduring it. The second the sentence left my lips, I froze. Alex looked up at me. "Don't get used to that anymore, Chloe," he said calmly, but with immense weight. That short sentence hit me straight in the heart, harder than all the comfort from my mother and my friends. Clutching my updated medical report, I walked out into the hallway and came face to face with Natalie. She was sitting in a hospital wheelchair, and Derek was carefully pushing her down the hall. The bandage on her arm had miraculously grown in size. Now, an elastic wrap covered almost her entire forearm. Her face was caked in pale foundation, her lips completely colorless. From a distance, it looked like she had just been taken off a ventilator. Seeing me, Derek braked reflexively. Natalie spoke first. "Chloe, honey, are you here to get your bandage changed?" I ignored her and tried to walk around the wheelchair, but she suddenly grabbed my sleeve with her good hand. "Please don't blame Derek," she whimpered loudly, making sure the whole hallway could hear her. "That day, he was just really scared for my heart. I've already begged him to go with you to ask for forgiveness, but he was afraid to leave me alone." I looked at her vice grip. "Let go of me." She pulled her hand back theatrically, as if she had been burned, shrinking against the back of the wheelchair. "I know you hate me," she trembled, "but I didn't get into that car on purpose, and I didn't know you were going to get hurt so badly. Why are you trying to make me look like a monster in front of all our friends?" The people waiting in the clinic lobby started turning around with interest. Her voice was loud enough to put on a free show. I leaned on my cane and looked down at her. "Natalie, do you really think if you squeeze out a tear first, nobody will fact-check you?" She paled. "I'm not making anything up." "Perfect. Let's talk facts." I pointed to her arm, bandaged to the elbow. "How bad is your injury?" Derek stepped forward, blocking her. "Chloe, are you crossing a line?" Enough with the interrogation. I turned around and walked up to the open door of the doctor's lounge. Dr. Vance was filling out charts at the desk. "Dr. Vance," I called out loudly. "Dr. Vance, tell me, can a patient publicly disclose their own medical evaluation regarding injuries from a specific date?" Alex looked at Natalie over his glasses. "With their verbal consent, absolutely." An animal terror flooded Natalie's eyes. I nodded. "In that case, I'll disclose mine." I pulled the discharge report and examination sheet from my bag. I placed them on the empty desk next to the nurse's station. For everyone present, I said loudly enough for the whole hallway to hear, "My injuries from the crash. A deep laceration to the calf, 7 sutures, applied. Severe soft tissue contusion, and a concussion." I turned to Natalie. "If you think I defamed you online, show everyone your report. What does it say?" "An amputation, an open fracture." Onlookers started gathering around. Natalie bit her lip until it turned white. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm not an overbearing drama queen like you. I just want to recover in peace." "Recover, please. But spreading rumors about me online?" I cut her off. Derek put his hands on her shoulders. "That's enough, Chloe. She could have a permanent scar on her hand. Is that not enough for you to show a drop of compassion?" Right then, Dr. Vance's voice sliced through the air from behind the desk in an absolutely impenetrable professional tone. "Superficial abrasions to the epidermis generally do not affect limb function or leave keloid scars. Changing the Band-Aid on time is sufficient." Derek froze. Natalie blended into the color of the wall. Alex, without changing his tone, delivered the final blow. According to the initial ER admission logs, patient Natalie Miller presented with a minor scratch measuring exactly 1 inch. There are no medical indications for a wheelchair or a full arm wrap. At this moment, a deafening silence dropped over the hallway. The older women who a minute ago were sighing and pitying Natalie suddenly pursed their lips and started whispering in a completely different tone. Right at that exact moment, Tara, who had arrived to pick me up, walked in. Hearing the end of the scene, she let out a loud snort. Wow. Riding in a wheelchair for a scratch, while the girl with the stitched-up leg walks with a cane? Natalie, you should move to Hollywood. Such acting talent is going to waste. Natalie lifted her head and looked at Derek with beaten puppy eyes. Derek, I've put you in an awkward position again. Let's get out of here. I don't want treatment anymore. Derek immediately crouched down in front of the wheelchair. Don't talk nonsense, Nat. We'll go to another doctor. Watching that nauseating scene, I suddenly realized something. It didn't hurt anymore. The wound on my leg stopped throbbing. My heart stopped aching. A month ago, seeing him tenderly wipe away her tears would have driven me insane with jealousy. I would have cried into my pillow and blamed myself for not being enough. Now, I felt nothing but a disgusted exhaustion. I grabbed my papers, turned around, and walked toward the exit. Derek jumped up and took a few steps after me. Chloe. I stopped. Was it really necessary to publicly humiliate Natalie like that? He asked reproachfully. I turned around slowly. Derek, you still only see that your little friend is embarrassed, and you completely refuse to see that I almost bled to death because of you. His breath hitched. I'm not trying to humiliate her, I added in an icy tone. I am simply bringing the truth to light, and the truth to people like you always seems humiliating. I walked out of the clinic and got into Tara's car. My friend pulled a thick manila folder from the glove compartment. Here's a little more truth to bring to light. I swung by the highway patrol station. I opened the folder. The limo motorcade route. We were originally never supposed to take Route 9, where there was major road construction. The limo company confirmed that an hour before departure, someone sent a new location to the group chat. I turned the page. A printout of the driver's message logs. Mike, 9:17 a.m. Natalie, to Derek. Honey, I think I left my emergency pill organizer at the florist on Route 9. Can the motorcade make a small detour? I'm so scared of feeling sick at the reception without my meds. 9:19 a.m. Derek, to Mike. Take the detour down Route 9. 9:20 a.m. Brenda. Good idea, sweet. Natalie's health is more important than sticking to the schedule. Turn around. 9:22 a.m. Mike. Derek, there's major construction on Route 9. Lanes are merging. We could get stuck or hit cars. 9:24 a.m. Natalie. It'll only take a couple of minutes. Today is Chloe's big day. I don't want anything to go wrong because I have an episode. Tara smiled darkly. In the end, everything went wrong. I stared at Natalie's text, my fingers curling into fists on their own. Mike gave his official statement. Tara continued. He told the investigator he didn't want to go that way at all, but since the groom and his mother insisted, he had to obey. Did they pick up the pill organizer, I asked, my voice hollow. Tara shook her head. The investigator called the florist. Natalie didn't forget any medication there. Nobody went to ask for it. I looked out the window. On the clinic steps, Derek was helping Natalie down the ramp in her wheelchair. Natalie clung to him, looking like a fragile flower broken by the wind. But she wasn't a flower. She was a sharp knife. And Derek was the one who drove that knife under my ribs with his own hands. When the highway patrol investigator officially summoned us to review the crash, Derek finally realized things were getting very serious. He called me 5 times that night. I didn't answer. On the 6th try, he sent a massive text. Chloe, I'm begging you, let's not turn this into a legal battle before fault is assigned. Natalie didn't ask to change the route with malicious intent. She was genuinely terrified for her heart. "Let's meet and talk," I replied briefly. "We'll see each other at the precinct. I only believe in facts." The next morning, Tara and I arrived at the precinct. Derek was already pacing nervously back and forth in the hallway. Natalie wasn't there, but Brenda had come running. Seeing me, my mother-in-law instantly went on the attack. "Chloe, are you really going to drag us through the courts? The accident was a shared tragedy, and you're trying to ruin my son's life over a scratch on your leg?" I walked past her like she didn't exist and sat down. Derek looked at my cane with guilt. "Your leg is doing better." "I only speak in front of the investigator," I cut him off. He sank into his seat. We were called into the office. The crash diagram was simple. After entering the construction zone, a car in front of the motorcade slammed on its brakes before a concrete barrier. The limos rear-ended each other in a chain reaction. Our lead car took the worst of it. I was sitting in the rear right seat. The metal crumpled and sliced my leg open. The investigator's main question was singular. Why did the motorcade deviate from the contracted route without authorization? Mike, the driver, walked into the office. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s. He was nervously twisting his cap. "Officer, I already explained. I didn't change the route. The groom radioed in. We urgently need to pick up some medication at the florist. I warned him there was construction, and the groom told me my friend's health is more important than the schedule." Derek frowned. "I was just worried she'd have an episode." Mike nodded vigorously. "Yeah, that's exactly what he said." The investigator asked to enter the message logs as evidence. The printouts hit the desk. Brenda, glancing at the papers, immediately started babbling. "Officer, the girl was just scared. Sweet Natalie has a weak constitution. The emergency meds were a matter of life or death." I silently placed the official email reply from the florist owner on the desk. On the day of the wedding, nobody came looking for any pill organizer, the investigator read aloud. Furthermore, there is nothing logged in the shop's lost and found book. Derek picked up the paper, and his face slowly began to break out in red splotches. Brenda immediately covered for him. "Well, the girl got confused by the stress. It could happen to anyone." I shot her an icy glare. Because of her confusion, a multi-car pileup happened. Your Natalie walked away with a scratch and left in an ambulance like a VIP, while I was left bleeding on the highway with a shredded leg and a concussion. And you think the word confused holds up in a court of law? "What do you want?" Brenda shrieked. "For her to get on her knees in front of you? I don't need your knees. I will be filing a civil lawsuit for personal injury and property damage against the responsible parties." Derek's head snapped up. "You're going to sue Natalie?" "Not just her." I paused, looking him dead in the eye. "You, too." A ringing silence filled the office. Derek recoiled as if he had been physically slapped. "You were the client who rented the cars," I continued in an even voice. "You gave the driver a direct order to change the route, ignoring warnings of danger. And you were the one who abandoned me in a wrecked car. A clear case of negligence." Brenda stood up, violently knocking her chair to the floor. "You've completely lost your mind. Suing your own fiancé?" "Ex-fiancé," I corrected. Derek's face turned gray. "Chloe, are you really going to take this to civil court?" "You brought me here, step by step." He clenched his fists until they cracked. "Yes, I admit it. I panicked that day, and I acted wrongly. But understand this. If Natalie had had a heart attack and died, I would have blamed myself for the rest of my life." I looked at him. "And if I had died?" He went silent. He couldn't answer that question because, in his warped coordinate system, Natalie always took first place, and I existed in some residual corner. Leaving the precinct, Derek caught up with me in the parking lot. "Chloe, wait." I stopped, leaning on my cane. "Please, let's not take this to court," he pleaded. "Canceling the wedding. Fine, I agree. Paying for the damage to the cars? Your medical bills. I'll find the money. We'll settle, but no courts." My mom cares deeply about her reputation at the school where she teaches. She won't survive the humiliation. I let out a bitter laugh, devoid of any joy. "So to spare your mother humiliation, I was supposed to suffer my injuries in silence?" "I didn't mean that," he muttered. "You never mean it like that, but the ending is always the same. I clean up the fallout of your actions." Derek's eyes were bloodshot. "You used to understand me. I used to be a convenient idiot." I snapped and got into my Uber. That afternoon, a Zelle transfer hit my account from Derek. $5,000. The memo read, "Preliminary compensation. Chloe, please don't be mad. Let's talk." I instantly returned it to the sender and forwarded him the Excel sheet. "This is not a bribe for my emotions. It is legal liability. Please pay strictly according to the itemized invoice. Otherwise, I'll see you in court." He didn't reply. That night, Brenda, realizing her son's pleas weren't working on me, decided to launch another psychological attack. This time, she posted a massive wall of text on our Neighborhoods Next Door app, attaching a photo of me. "Neighbors, look at this. This person walked out on my son's wedding, and now she's kicking us out of our apartment and demanding thousands of dollars. This is the kind of gold-digging trash out there today. They put the deed in their name before the marriage. They bleed the groom's family dry, and at the first sign of trouble, they abandon their husband." When I opened the app, the comment section was already a war zone. Some were scandalized, calling me every name in the book. Others pitied the poor woman. I didn't bother writing furious replies. I logged into the county property tax portal and downloaded the public records. Then, I posted 3 screenshots in the Nextdoor thread: the property deed showing me as the sole owner, the bank transfer receipt for the down payment coming directly from my personal account, and the official 3-day eviction notice served to the Sinclair family. To the photos, I added a paragraph. "Dear neighbors, this condo was purchased prior to the marriage exclusively with my personal funds. The Sinclair family did not contribute a single cent, has no ownership stake in the property, and holds no formal lease agreement. I request that Brenda Sinclair cease her public defamation against me. Otherwise, I will attach these screenshots to my civil suit for libel." The neighborhood chat froze. 5 minutes later, a neighbor commented, "Wait, so the condo is the girl's? Why is the mother-in-law acting like it's hers?" Yikes. Another neighbor chimed in. "I heard from someone at the wedding that the groom left his bride bleeding in a wrecked limo and ran off carrying another girl. Good for her for dumping him." Public opinion flipped instantly. Brenda frantically started deleting her posts, but my screenshots were already safely stored in my defamation folder. Tara, watching it all unfold, shook her head. "You've gotten really cold, Chloe." I looked at the dark screen of my phone. It's not coldness. I finally learned the rules. You can't back down. I used to take a step back, hoping they'd appreciate my flexibility. They only saw my step back as an invitation to step forward and hit me again. The next day, the venue manager called me. "Hi, Chloe. Mr. Sinclair informed us that you two have reconciled, and that your wedding is being repurposed into a family dinner this Saturday. Could you tell me if you'll be paying the remaining balance from your account like last time?" I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. "Who told you the event was still on?" The manager sounded confused. The groom's mother, Brenda, said the couple just had a fight, but that the banquet was still on for Saturday. I gave a cold smile. They had decided to ambush me with the pressure of the entire extended family. The wedding is officially canceled, I said firmly. I will not pay the remaining balance. You can keep my deposit per the cancellation policy. But we've already sent confirmations to the groom's guest list, the manager panicked. That sounds like a groom problem. An hour later, a text from Derek came through. Chloe, on Saturday. All our relatives are gathering at the venue. I am begging you to come. We can't end this over texts. Whatever compensation you demand, I will pay it. But let's talk with the family present, please. I typed my reply quickly. I'll be there. When Tara found out, her eyes went wide. You've lost your mind. Going alone against that whole mob of relatives? They're going to eat you alive and guilt trip you into dropping the lawsuit. I'm not going alone, I replied calmly. And my only concern is that they won't all show up. On Saturday, I put on a fitted black dress, understated and elegant. The wound on my leg still throbbed with pain. I walked slowly, leaning on a sleek black cane, but with my back perfectly straight. Tara walked by my side, and on my other side walked Sarah Page, a ruthless, razor-sharp lawyer in her 40s, recommended by a regular customer at my mom's bakery. After reviewing my evidence folder, Sarah had only said one thing. The case is 100% winnable. The main rule is, do not activate nice girl mode during negotiations. Inside the venue, the wedding decor was still up. A red carpet, a beautiful photo wall made of white roses, framed photos of Derek and me on the tables. Except in one photo, my face was half covered by a leaning centerpiece. When the three of us crossed the threshold, dozens of eyes locked onto me. Brenda, flashing a fake smile for the relatives, practically lunged at me immediately and hissed in my ear. Chloe, all the family elders are here today. Behave. Don't say anything stupid. Give Derek a chance. Leave yourself a way back. I looked at her coldly. I came here today to burn that bridge to the ground. The smile vanished from her face. Derek stepped off the dais. Seeing my black dress, he grimaced. Chloe, why black? This is supposed to be a reconciliation. It's the color of mourning for the family we never had, I replied loudly. His face twisted. Don't make a scene. We wanted to talk about this calmly. I nodded toward the rows of chairs. You wanted an audience? Then let's talk. Natalie was there too, wearing a soft baby blue dress. She was sitting in the front row, hands neatly folded in her lap. On her hand, she wore a tiny, flesh-colored Band-Aid. Seeing me, she stood up immediately. Chloe, I came to personally ask for your forgiveness. I don't need your apologies. I need your half of the legal compensation I cut her off. An indignant murmur rippled through the crowd. One of the aunts whispered loudly, Always about the money. The food is already paid for, and she's throwing a tantrum. No wonder Derek looked elsewhere. Limping slightly, I walked up to the small stage and took the microphone from the confused MC. Derek rushed toward me. Chloe, what are you doing? I swept my gaze over the silent room. Since the Sinclair family decided to gather you all here under the guise of a wedding, you can be witnesses. I pulled the ring box from my purse and set it on the edge of the table. Next to it, Sarah dropped the heavy binder of documents with a loud thud. Today is not a wedding banquet. Today is the official dissolution of the engagement and the collection of debts. Absolute chaos broke out in the room. Brenda, her face contorted with fury, lunged toward the stage, trying to snatch the microphone from me. Little girl, you are humiliating us. Sarah stepped forward and blocked her firmly with an outstretched arm. Brenda Sinclair, keep your distance. I am the official legal representative for Chloe Evans. If you touch her, I will add assault and battery to the lawsuit." Hearing the word lawyer, the room instantly fell dead silent. I opened the binder. Let's start with the wedding expenses. Venue deposit, $8,000, paid from my personal account. Event planner deposit, $5,500, paid by me. Premium limo rental, $2,800, paid by me. With every number I named, Tara projected the scan of the corresponding bank receipt onto the venue's massive screen. Those weren't the empty words of a spurned bride. They were iron-clad receipts. Brenda opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water, but the stares of the relatives boring into her back forced her to stay quiet. I turned the page. The condo where the Sinclair family planned to build their family nest. Down payment, $86,000. Renovations, $23,760. Furniture and appliances, $16,420. Financial contribution from the groom's family, $0. Someone in the crowd let out a loud gasp. The aunts, who a minute ago were calling me a gold digger, looked down at their plates. Derek's face turned ashen. "Chloe, stop, please," he croaked. "I didn't want to humiliate you, but you humiliated me constantly." I raised my voice and kept reading. Over the last 2 years as a fiancé, I paid for medical copays, spa retreats, and monthly living allowances for Brenda Sinclair, totaling $13,500. She used to convince me that this was an investment in our future united family. Now the engagement is broken. Under civil law, I demand the return of those funds as unjust enrichment. My mother-in-law couldn't take it and shrieked over the crowd. "That's a lie. You gave them to me voluntarily." I nodded. "Yes, voluntarily at the time. But after you publicly accused me of stealing money from you on the Nextdoor app, I was forced to clarify in front of your family exactly who was taking advantage of whom." One of the uncles in the room let out a loud snort. "Jesus, Brenda, you have no shame. The girl bought you a house and you drag her through the mud?" Brenda turned red, then pale, clutching her chest. Natalie suddenly stood up from her seat. I don't understand anything about your money. But Derek truly loves you, Chloe. You can't let your pride destroy 6 years of your lives." I looked down at her. "You don't understand money, but you do understand how to hijack limo routes." The tears on her face dried instantly. I nodded at Tara, and the projector displayed the route map and the iMessage screenshots from Mike, the driver. On the day of the wedding, the original route avoided the construction zone on Route 9. I stated, enunciating every word clearly. Natalie, under the pretext of a forgotten pill organizer, demanded we take a detour. The driver warned of the crash risk. Derek ordered him to drive that way anyway. Brenda approved it. And the florist owner gave an official statement yesterday, affirming that no pill organizer was ever left there. A bomb went off in the room. Relatives started murmuring in outrage. Natalie recoiled, stammering. I got confused. I was so nervous, I mixed everything up." "Did you go into the store to look for it?" I asked harshly. "No." "And after the crash, when you had a tiny scratch and Derek was carrying you, did you tell him I was trapped in the metal and bleeding out?" Tears welled up in her eyes again. "I was terrified. I couldn't see or hear anything." "You were terrified, so you clung to another woman's fiancé's neck like a leech." "And Derek was terrified, so between 2 women he chose to save the one complaining the loudest." Everyone in this family was allowed to get scared and panic. I was the only one forced to be strong and understanding. Derek stood by the stage, his chest heaving heavily. Chloe exhaled, defeated. I picked up the ring box and snapped it open. Derek, I took this ring off my bloody hand on the side of the highway. Now I'm giving it back to you. I placed the velvet box on top of the pile of receipts. As of today, our engagement is terminated. Vacate the condo within 3 days. Payments must be made according to the pre-litigation demand. My lawyer will serve you. Liability for the traffic accident will fall on the at-fault parties. I paused, looking into his desperate eyes. You no longer have to force me to understand poor Natalie. You no longer have to force me to put up with your mother's tantrums. I am no longer your convenient bride. The banquet hall went so quiet, you could hear the hum of the kitchen exhaust fan. Derek stood there with his shoulders slumped, like all the blood had been drained from his body. He stared at the ring, but didn't even reach out to take it. Brenda, recovering from the shock, launched her final attack. You've embarrassed us in front of the whole family. You aren't human. You're a heartless calculator. I brought the mic to my lips. Brenda, do you want me to play the voice memos where you called my leg being sliced wide open an overly emotional bridal drama? She snapped her mouth shut instantly. One of Derek's older uncles walked up to her and cut her off harshly. Brenda, shut up already. You're in this up to your neck and it's a disgrace. My mother-in-law looked around in horror. In the past, the family had always taken her side. She was a virtuoso at crying and spinning stories about how I manipulated her poor son. But against bank statements and police reports, tears didn't work. Natalie suddenly clutched her chest. Derek, I don't feel well. I can't breathe, she moaned, starting to slump in her chair. Derek moved toward her on instinct. I saw it. The whole room saw it. And Derek himself realized it. He froze halfway, turning even paler. Tears of genuine, unfiltered panic welled up in Natalie's eyes. Really, I don't feel well. I'm not faking. I didn't say anything, but Tara, standing by the projector, let out a bright laugh. Natalie, don't rush to die just yet. If you feel sick, call 911. The clinic is right across the street. Just don't ask Derek to carry you, or the relatives might think you're the bride. A wave of laughter rippled through the room. Natalie turned red to the root of her hair. She looked at Derek and squeezed out in a trembling voice. Derek, are you mad at me? This time, Derek didn't comfort her. He slowly shifted his gaze from the screen, showing the crashed limo's route, to her face. What is this story about the non-existent medication, Nat? He asked in a hollow voice. I really got confused, she stammered. You've never mixed up your meds in your entire life? He replied, his voice like ice. Natalie's eyes darted back and forth. Derek, are you suspecting me? We grew up together. Don't you know what kind of person I am? She had used that manipulative phrase 1,000,000 times. In the past, Derek would have folded. But now, caught in the crossfire of dozens of stares and irrefutable facts, he could no longer pretend to be a blind idiot. I nodded to Tara. Another screenshot popped up on the screen. It was an iMessage thread. No illegal wiretaps, no hacking. The night before the wedding, Natalie had simply texted the wrong group chat. At 11:30 p.m., she had asked in the wedding planner's vendor chat if she could be assigned to the car right behind ours, because being far away from Derek would trigger her panic. The coordinator replied that that car was reserved for the bridal party. And then Natalie sent a message meant for someone else. Whatever, it's easy to get that idiot Chloe out of the way. If Derek chooses me in a critical moment, he'll finally realize who's more important to him. Natalie deleted the message a minute later, but the coordinator had taken a screenshot and sent it to Tara. At the time, Tara hadn't thought much of that high school pettiness. It just annoyed her. But after the crash, that screenshot took on a new, terrifying meaning. The screen glowed brightly. Natalie froze completely solid. Derek stared at the line of text. His lips trembled. "You wrote this." Natalie turned white as a sheet. I had a breakdown. I wrote it out of anger, in the heat of the moment. "It wasn't in the heat of the moment," I replied in an even voice. "You were testing him. You were methodically testing his limits for all these years. You tested if he would make me change my bouquet for you. You tested if he would drop everything and run to you in the middle of the night before our wedding. You tested if he would change the route on your whim. You tested if he would run to save you, leaving me to die. And you know what?" I paused, looking straight into Derek's ghost-white face. "Every single time he chose you." Natalie shook her head, crying. No, that's not true." "But it's not just her fault, Derek." I turned to my ex-fiancé. She reached out her hands. "And you let her hang on to your neck. She complained about a scratch, and you ran to her, forcing me to swallow my pain. Nobody tricked you, Derek. You genuinely wanted to be her savior at my expense." After those words, the blood completely drained from Derek's face. He opened his mouth to justify himself, but couldn't manage a single sound. In the crowd, one of the uncles summed it up loudly. "That's not childhood friendship. That's intentional wedding sabotage." And the groom lost his damn mind, leaving his injured girl in a wreck. Good on Chloe for telling him to go to hell. The mood of the relatives completely shifted. They looked at the Sinclair family with open disgust. Brenda slumped heavily into her chair, her lips trembling. It seemed that for the first time in her life, she realized her flea market hysterics didn't work anymore. Sarah stepped forward and left the official legal demands on the table. "Derek Sinclair, Brenda Sinclair, I am officially notifying you that the eviction from the property, the recovery of unjust enrichment, the reimbursement of wedding expenses, and the personal injury compensation will be resolved through civil litigation. And if you continue to spread defamatory statements about my client, we will also see you for libel." Derek didn't look at the documents. He couldn't tear his bloodshot eyes away from my face. "Chloe, what if I admit all my mistakes? What if I pay you back every last cent? Then you will have simply faced the consequences you deserved." I gave a cold smile. "We could start over." Silence fell over the room again. Natalie flinched like she had been whipped. Brenda shifted frantically in her chair. I looked at Derek and realized something strange. If he had asked me that question a month ago, I would have sobbed with happiness. If he had said it the day before the wedding, I would have set strict ultimatums about Natalie and his mother. But I would have stayed. But now, standing in front of me was a pathetic, total stranger. He didn't want to start over out of some great love for me. He was panicking over the loss of control. Because I was no longer staying up at night waiting for him. I was no longer funding his mother's lifestyle. No longer taking care of Natalie. No longer sponsoring their comfortable lives. His illusion of a perfect setup had shattered. "Your regret, Derek, is not going to be my new beginning," I replied calmly. I set the mic on the edge of the table, turned around, and limped toward the exit. As I pushed open the double doors of the hall, Natalie suddenly screamed hysterically behind my back. "You won! Are you happy with what you forced us all to do?" But Derek will never forget me. I turned around slowly. She was no longer playing the little sister. Her makeup was smeared. Her eyes held pure, unadulterated hatred. "I don't need him anymore," I replied with a slight smile. "You don't have to fight me for him. Keep what's left of him." With that, I pushed open the heavy doors. Outside, the bright spring sun blinded me. The suffocating room of fake roses was left behind, and I never looked back. After the ruined banquet, all hell broke loose in the Sinclair family. Brenda tried to cry in the extended family group chat, complaining that I had hired a vulture lawyer to leave them in ruins. But one of Derek's brothers replied harshly, "Brenda, we all saw the receipts. Stop embarrassing yourself. Give the girl her money back." Then she wrote a tearful Facebook post about how cruel modern daughters-in-law had become. In the comments, one of her own coworkers asked, "Did the groom side put a single cent into that condo?" The post was deleted 10 minutes later. Derek started bombarding me with texts. He wrote that they were packing their things and moving out. He promised he had harshly cut ties with Natalie. He admitted he had been garbage and begged to meet just for coffee. I left all the messages unread. In the past, if he texted, "Let's talk," I would drop everything and run to listen to his excuses, which usually boiled down to me needing to be the bigger person. That wasn't going to happen anymore. My HOA president informed me that the Sinclairs had ordered a U-Haul moving truck. Before handing over the keys, Brenda tried to load up the LG fridge and the Bosch washer-dryer, both bought with my money. The building's sharp-eyed security guard stopped the movers. I got a call. I ordered him to check the appliances against my receipts. My mother-in-law screamed through the guard's phone that I was suffocating her over a washing machine. I replied on speaker, "That is my property. You aren't taking anything except your own underwear." She threw the phone in a rage. That afternoon, she dragged herself to our bakery. This time without her entourage, just with her sister. It was the lunch rush. My mom was wiping down the counter. Brenda walked in and slumped at a table. Her eyes were red. She looked haggard. "Helen, let's talk mother to mother," she whimpered. "The kids had a fight. It happens, but we the adults shouldn't add fuel to the fire. Chloe is young, impulsive. She needs someone to knock some sense into her head. The wedding was canceled. It's an embarrassment for the whole town. Who is going to marry her with that kind of baggage?" I stepped out of the back room. My mother doesn't need to knock sense into anyone. Seeing me, Derek's mother instantly plastered on a fake smile of suffering. "Chloe, honey, I understand your pain, but Derek isn't having an easy time either. He's lost weight. He's walking around like a ghost. You can't erase 6 years with a lawsuit." "I can." I cut her off, sitting at the table. The smile vanished from Brenda's face. She looked pleadingly at my mother. "Helen, tell her that it's hard for a woman to live without the strong shoulder of a man. If Chloe keeps suing and causing scandals, she'll ruin her own reputation." My mom carefully folded the damp rag. "You know, I used to think like that too," she said calmly. Brenda's eyes lit up with hope. "That's why, when my daughter was mistreated in your family, I always asked her to be an understanding fiancé," my mom continued, her voice turning to steel. "When you mocked our lack of money, I tolerated it. When you bled my daughter dry to pay your living expenses, I tolerated it. But I tolerated it exactly up until the moment my daughter was taken to a hospital in a blood-soaked dress, while your little boy carried a perfectly healthy girl in his arms." Brenda's lips trembled. That was an accident." Derek panicked. "And what happened after the accident?" my mom asked without raising her voice. "You came to my coffee shop to scream. You called my daughter a thief on the neighborhood app. You tried to steal her appliances when moving out. You didn't come here to make peace, Brenda. You came here because you're terrified of the lawsuits, and you decided to pressure Chloe through me." Brenda's sister tried to intervene. "Co-mother-in-law, why be so rude?" "We are not co-mothers-in-law. They didn't sign the papers." Thank God. My mom gave the counter a sharp tap. Get out of my coffee shop before I hit the panic button for the cops. I have cameras and witnesses everywhere. Brenda turned green with rage. She jumped up, almost knocking over the table. At the door, she turned around. If you ruin Derek with the courts, he will never look your way again. That is my ultimate dream, I smiled. The door slammed shut. My mom held her posture for a few seconds. Then her legs gave out and she sank heavily into a chair. I rushed over to her. Mom, was I too hard on her? She asked, clutching her chest. You were magnificent, Mom. I laughed, hugging her. She laughed too, and then her eyes got red. Honey, I was so afraid people would laugh at you for the canceled wedding. But now I realize, screw people. If you had married him, you would have cried for the rest of your life. Everything is going to be fine, Mom. I promise you. That night, Sarah prepared 3 packets of documents. We are going to attack them on 3 fronts, the lawyer stated firmly. First, eviction from the property. Second, unjust enrichment and wedding damages. Third, personal injury lawsuit against the parties responsible for the crash. Plus, a claim for defamation. We will accept a pretrial settlement if they reach out, but only under the condition of full payment of the invoice, written apologies, and immediate eviction from the property. No 10-year payment plans, I replied firmly. Sarah nodded in approval. Excellent mindset. Our evidence is irrefutable. Time is working against them. Derek arrived at the settlement mediation 30 minutes early, in a wrinkled white shirt, unshaven, with deep bags under his eyes. His mother sat next to him, with her lips pressed into a thin line. Natalie had dragged herself there too. She wasn't playing the invalid anymore. The elastic wrap was gone, leaving only a regular Band-Aid on her hand. Seeing me, she instinctively hid her hand under the table. Sarah opened her laptop. A neutral mediator read the points of the lawsuit: wedding compensation return of funds, transferred to his mother, and liability for the accident. Brenda immediately went on the defensive. We already moved out of the apartment. We didn't take anything of yours. What more do you want from us? Sarah read calmly from the paper. LG refrigerator, Bosch washer dryer, Casper mattress, all purchased by my client. You hired movers to steal this property, which was recorded by the building's security cameras. Attempted theft does not eliminate liability. We demand a notarized, signed restraining order prohibiting you from coming near the property and full payment of legal fees. Derek's mother choked on the air, but stayed quiet. They moved on to the crash. Natalie, sniffling, took the floor. I admit I asked to change the route, but I didn't do it on purpose. My heart really hurt. I suffered in that accident too. Tara, sitting next to me, scoffed coldly. I looked at Natalie. The shop owner confirmed there was no medication. The texts with the driver prove you demanded the route change, knowing there was construction. The witnesses, Tara and the driver, confirm they screamed at Derek about my bleeding. But you told him you were having an episode and pulled him away toward the ambulance. Natalie trembled. It was loud. I was in shock. I didn't hear Tara screaming. Sarah presented the driver's statement and the wedding coordinator's statement, complete with the famous group chat screenshot. Every word of those papers fell like a heavy stone on Derek's shoulders. He finally lifted his bloodshot eyes to me. Chloe, forgive me. Silence hung in the conference room. You should have said those words out there, on the highway, next to the wrecked car, I replied calmly. He swallowed hard. I know. But now, that won't change anything. Brenda panicked. Derek, don't give in to her. She just wants to bleed us dry. Derek suddenly whipped around toward his mother and barked so loudly the glass windows rattled. Mom, shut your mouth. His mother shrank into her chair. It was the first time I remembered seeing him shut his mother up. If it had happened a year ago, I would have been thrilled. But now that belated realization wasn't worth a dime. The negotiations lasted 3 hours. In the end, the Sinclairs capitulated under the weight of the evidence. A settlement was signed. Derek's family handed over the keys and accepted a restraining order from the condo. Brenda had to post a legally drafted retraction of her slander on Nextdoor and in the family chats. The financial damages for the venue and the planner were split proportionally based on fault, with Derek paying the lion's share. Natalie assumed joint liability for the personal injuries, since the route change was initiated by her. As they signed the papers, Natalie turned to Derek with tears in her eyes. "Derek, are you really going to make me pay these thousands of dollars for the settlement? I don't have that kind of money." Derek looked at her with a heavy, cold stare. "You share direct fault in the crash. You are going to pay." Natalie, she recoiled from him as if he had leprosy. "You didn't used to be like this." I couldn't hold back a laugh. Derek jumped and looked at me. "You see, Derek," I said, "she also thinks you're ruined the second you stopped paying for her whims." I took my copy of the agreement, stood up, and went to the door. Derek caught up with me by the elevators. "Chloe, I'll pay everything on time. We won't come near the apartment again. And, Natalie?" I cut all contact. I pressed the elevator button. "It's your life. Do whatever you want with it." An unbearable pain reflected in his eyes. "Do you really not care at all anymore?" I looked at the digital floor indicator. I remembered the wail of the sirens. I remembered how he tossed over his shoulder. "Natalie's condition is unstable. Just hold on." There was a time when I cared immensely, Derek, but it died that day on the side of the road. The elevator doors opened. He took a step forward, yelling desperately, "What if I give you a new wedding? I'll earn the money. I'll buy a better ring. I'll choose only you." I turned around. "I don't need a wedding, Derek. I need a man who, when I'm bleeding out, runs to me first, not someone else. And that man will never be you." The doors closed, leaving him standing in the empty hallway. A week later, the venue asked me to come pick up the remaining portion of the refunded deposit. I went on a weekday. The hall was empty. The wall of white roses was half dismantled. The withered bouquets lay sadly in a corner like a bad joke that ended in tragedy. The manager handed me the refund receipt and gave me a rehearsed apology. "It's not your fault," I shook my head. The manager hesitated. "Mr. Sinclair asked me to tell you he's waiting for you in the parking lot." I walked out. Derek was standing by his car, nervously smoking one cigarette after another. He had lost a lot of weight. His cheekbones were sharp. In his hands, he clutched the same velvet ring box. "I know you don't want to see me," he started in a hoarse voice, "but I needed to say this. That day, I truly wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. I wasn't lying at the altar. It's just that I'm so used to Natalie being weak, to her not having anyone to protect her. I thought you were strong. I thought you would understand. I forgot that you needed me too." "You didn't forget," I replied coldly. "You just found it convenient to ignore it." He went pale. "When I carried Natalie to the ambulance, I swear I didn't think your injuries were that bad. Tara was screaming it at the top of her lungs, and you heard her perfectly." "I thought you could handle it," he whispered, lowering his head. I let out a dry laugh. "You know what, Dr. Vance was right. This wedding really needed to turn into a funeral." Derek's head snapped up. Terror filled his eyes. "We buried the wedding, Derek. And also the version of me that tolerated you." A single tear rolled down his cheek. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. I used to think that if he ever cried for me, I would forgive him anything in the world. Now I looked at him like an actor in a bad movie. Chloe, why are you being so absolute? He asked, his voice cracking. People make mistakes. Because you didn't just make one mistake. You methodically chose her for 6 years. She wanted a spot in the motorcade, you pushed me aside. She felt lonely at night, you abandoned me. Your mother squeezed me for money, you made me put up with it. The wedding day just put a spotlight on all of that. I refused to keep sitting on the bench of my own life. I pulled the key handover document from my purse. This is the last paper. Transfer the settlement money to my account and never call me again. He took the paper with trembling fingers. This is all that's left of our 6 years. Just paperwork. Not just that, I looked down at my leg where a fresh scar hid under my pants. There's also a scar on my calf. His breath hitched. I turned around and walked toward my car. Chloe, he yelled desperately after me. Tell me the truth. If I had grabbed you first that day, wouldn't we be right here, right now? I stopped for a second without turning around. He seemed to exhale in relief. Because, I added, if you had chosen me then, the absolute hell that happened afterward simply wouldn't have existed. You killed us with your own hands. An absolute silence fell behind me. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove out onto the sun-drenched street. My mom was waiting for me by the curb in front of the bakery. She was sitting in the driver's seat of her slightly dented delivery van. On the passenger seat was a basket of fresh produce from the farmer's market. Seeing me, she waved happily. Chloe, let's go home. I put a roast in the slow cooker just the way you like it, and I baked some apple pies. I smiled, walked over, climbed into the passenger seat, and hugged her tightly. When I was a little girl, I used to ride with her like this. Back then, I thought that growing up and putting on a white dress meant I would have my own true home with a reliable man. But now I understood. A home isn't a stamp on a marriage certificate or an engraved ring. A home is a person who, the moment they see you hurting, drops everything and asks, honey, where does it hurt? A month later, my last bandages were removed. Only a pale pink scar remained on my calf. Dr. Vance nodded in satisfaction at the final checkup. It's healing beautifully. The scar will fade over time, but it won't disappear completely. The cosmetic imperfection will remain. Let it stay, I smiled. It's an excellent reminder that you should never tolerate other people's audacity until you bleed. Alex let out a short laugh as he took off his gloves. That reminder cost you dearly, but it works perfectly. That afternoon, the first massive transfer per the settlement hit my account, with a simple memo from D. Sinclair. No extra words, no apologies. That night, Brenda posted a dry, legally mandated retraction on Nextdoor and in the family chats. It was the exact text drafted by my lawyer. She admitted to defamation and publicly apologized for lying about a runaway bride stealing money. I didn't care how sincere it was. The important thing was that nobody would ever dare drag my name through the mud again. Natalie fell off the radar. Tara secretly told me she got into a monumental fight with Derek when he sent her the bill for her share of the wrecked cars and my medical expenses. She threw a hysterical tantrum, screaming that he wasn't a real man for forcing a weak girl to pay. Derek cursed her out and blocked her everywhere. But I had absolutely no interest in watching those spiders eat each other inside a jar. When I got back to the coffee shop, Mom was rolling out croissant dough. A beautiful new sign hung over the entrance, Helen and Chloe's Bakery. Mom said we were a teen now, and my name belonged on the storefront. I sat down by the cash register and pulled that shredded wedding dress out of a bag. The white lace still held the rust-brown bloodstains the dry cleaner hadn't been able to remove. I didn't throw the dress away. I grabbed some scissors, cut off a tiny piece of pristine white lace, and glued it to the first page of our new ledger. At the top, I wrote today's date, and underneath, I added a single line. As of today, I will no longer call humiliation a compromise. Tara walked in, and seeing me writing, came over and looked over my shoulder curiously. Ah, a new book for a new life. And what are we going to write for the first entry? I looked out the window. The midday sun flooded the street. Pedestrians hurried about their business. Someone laughed. Someone drank iced coffee as they walked. My phone was free of toxic group chats, midnight mother-in-law tantrums, and a fiancé's manipulations. I slowly closed the book and gave my friend a happy smile. We're going to write pure net profit.